Hey buddy, and welcome to Rauta's tour review. Technically speaking, some kind of a semi-retrospective, but not quite, so bear with me. This is Heavydeath from Sweden, now more like a defunct band, and here with two releases. Technically speaking, it's very much more complicated than that, and you will soon find out why. Now, these CDs were sent to me already like 2 years ago, so they were like old on arrival, which is exactly the reason why I didn't get busy with them. That is always newer albums getting the priority. But here we are finally. This came with some other band from the same members, but that's a different story. Now we'll focus on Heavydeath. This is an MCD called The Newborn, which is one of their latest releases. There's enough material to be called full length. If I'm not mistaken, if I didn't get wrong the whole length of this release, but it seems it's officially an EP of sorts. And that's part of the story, the narrative here. What is the other part, then again, is very much different. This is this Anthology release with a subtitle, also from the same band, obviously, Heavydeath. And this is the opposite of an EP or MCD. This tunga, döden CD box is filled with 2 CDs or 70 minutes of music. And here is the reasoning. I mean, if you would see this whole track list without these reflections, you will find out this is a compilation made of older releases, EPs, demos, and whatever. So it's a very peculiar compilation in the sense like it's totally something different than their latest era. Comes with a nice glossy booklet. I'll try to do my best so I can show you at least a little bit of it. Seems like some of the pages are kind of stuck. That is already when I was, checking this for a review, it seemed like some of the pages were like stuck as if some glue has gotten it. But here it is. This is exactly what I'm talking about. There is some kind of a glue which has really put these pages together. I don't dare to do it fully, but you get the idea. I mean, this was like stuck here. You probably see these glue marks here. These were pretty much like, ready to crack up. Anyway, here is some of the tracks I'm showing to you, like tracks 1 to 5 mixed from EP 2016. Then there are these alternative tracks and so on. Some are even demo material. So definitely Anthology is the right word to describe this rather interesting, more than 140 minutes of music kind of a package, and then there is this EP. So it gets confusing maybe, but that's where we have Metal Archives to help us out to explain the story of the band. What makes this peculiar is this is more like a side project. If we go for the members list, back then when the band was active from 2013 to 2019, and then it says again from 2019 present with no döden name, which doesn't have any releases out yet. So basically a few years activity. And throughout these few years, you have seen these 3 guys who all have this Runemagick connection. Johan Beckman, bass player, ex-Runemagick. Then we have Niklas Rudolfsson for guitars and vocals. Also part of the band. And then finally we have Daniel Moilanen drums. Also, here he's mentioned as Catatonia, but ex-Runemagick as well. So they all have these connections to other bands. Niklas was the latest Runemagick member still. And I got these with Runemagick CDs that were sent to me for review. So this was more like a side project, like, hey, while reviewing the Runemagick stuff, why don't you give this one a go? So that's why this Heavydeath stuff is here. But like I said, a little bit late to the party. This EP from 2021, The Newborn, is the newest one, so already coming here 2 years late. And this Den tunga, döden Anthology from 2018 was already about 5 years of age on arrival. So that's being the justification for me to just let it come up when it's for time for that. But this is interesting when you look at this whole discography here. I mean, they started in 2013, but first demo 2014, and what a bunch of demos there are from 2014 to, say, no, well, basically 2014. You have demo, 10 compilation, more demos, then more compilations, and full album the next year. So why on earth they had like 10 demos in 1 year, and then compilation to put them all together, only to do the debut album, and then followed by more EPs, 10 demo, more EPs, and then going on to 2016 to do the second album, and 2017 third album. Sounds very mental case to me. So you have 3 albums back to back, but with that you have plenty of EPs and plenty of demos. And when you figure it out, it's from 2014 to 2018. That was pretty much the most active years. It's like 5 years. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? And then only after a couple of years later, you have the Newborn EP 2021, and that's pretty much of it. But that's already by the time that has been buried. So it doesn't really make sense. No, we don't really, ask the questions here why they decided to do that. That's more like an interview time. But what matters is, what are these releases? Now, Heavydeath is labeled here as Doom Death Metal by Metal Archive's site, and that's technically speaking very, very accurate. However, Newborn EP and this then tunga, döden Anthology, which is here made of demo recordings and more, a compilation, and features some 70 minutes on the first album and some 72 minutes on the second one, so 19 tracks of the lengthier side of things, and now it's time to talk about that. Now, the tunga, döden starts with more like a more doomy style of music. I mean, it's definitely more doom than doom death, at the very least more doom than death metal. There are even clean vocals and all that stuff, which is obviously putting the weight on that side of a scale. So there is this very strong doominess all around the whole album. That is not exactly the kind of epic doom, however, which is known from Swedish bands like Candlemass and Sorcerer, but it's doom nonetheless. And that already puts this aside from Runemagick, which is definitely more on the death metal side of things. But then again, when you kind of see the band going forward, you start feeling this death metal presence taking over more and more. However, even with the second album, the doom death is still, I think, more in the doom section in terms of balance. Sometimes it almost feels like a perversion of doom metal when you kind of add that death metal element into it. Whether we're talking about the production or the songwriting, it's definitely on the doomier side of things. There are changes overall, of course, because it has a lot of different recordings from various years. But then again, as I showed you in the whole discography section, everything happened pretty quickly. We're not talking about separation of few years, in which case you would kind of get this self-explanatory feeling like, okay, whatever you did back 2010 would be different from 2015 and so on. But this all happened with a very, very short time frame, if that makes sense. So overall, there is not much really evolution in terms of songwriting and all. It's definitely like doom death metal because there are death metal growlings and certain riffs are more death metal kind of a thing. But when comparing to a lot of other doom death metal bands out there, yeah, this goes very much more into world of doom metal. Maybe some 30, 70% in that sense, like 70 being the doom metal side of things and 30 death metal, but either way. And to me, this anthology kind of showcases that this band was still very much in the demo era, which then again, this compilation is all about. It's not, doing albums. It's including all the demo recordings and whatever. And as such, it's definitely, telling the story of the early works, or more like outside the album discography section. It's a pretty interesting journey if you are interested in history of any given band, and in this case, Heavydeath. But when you are comparing these two full albums, yeah, it kind of shows very, very quickly that this is still in a very much demo level band, what you hear on this compilation anyway. So for me, it's a little bit of a mixed bag of goodies. Never been a big fan of traditional doom, so obviously in that sense, demo level material from that subgenre isn't exactly my cup of tea. I mean, it's clear and obvious that these guys are, handling their instruments well and all that stuff, and they understand what kind of a production fits the music. But when it comes to, the very question, is the music good? I would say maybe only for hardcore fans. Then when talking about the Newborn EP, which came after the band officially, more or less, was split up, and you have these 39 minutes of an EP, and like I said, technically speaking, 39 minutes would count as a full album anyway. So you have basically 2 extra lengthy tracks and 2, mid-lengthy ones, the kind of more typical ones. This is more where the death metal is very much more balanced with, the doom death metal thing. And as such, it's definitely pointing towards, classic names from the given genre, namely bands like Winter and the like. So yeah, you have that strong death metal presence, but it's just not, mid-tempo or slow-tempo death metal, which is often the case with a lot of bands labeled as doom death metal bands. I mean, I've seen these, listings where bands like Bolt Thrower are put into the doom death metal thing, and I'm like, no. And I think the same applies to bands like Asphyx. But I don't care about nitpicking about genres. What matters to me is if the music is good. And I would say the Newborn is a lot better than the previous works what you have here in Anthology anyway. So it's kind of ironic that when the band really kind of seemed to step up from those demo years, then they were kind of gone. Now, I don't know what is your preference in terms of music, obviously, because you come all from various parts of the world and you all have your respective musical tastes. So having this purely doom death metal release, the Newborn, versus this more anthological release, it's hard to say which one caters more to your need. If you are more on the doom side of thing, go with the Anthology first, and then you can maybe see the evolution of the band if that gets you interested. However, if you think trad doom seasoned with death metal is just out of your territory, go for the Newborn, assuming once again doom death is your cup of tea. It's pretty interesting to see that this band made stuff so quickly during so small of a time frame, because when you look at Runemagick, which is once again doom death metal, they had their thing going on since 1990, and if you look at their discography, it's quite big really. I mean, just look at the albums list, plain albums list, and you will see more than 10 albums right there. And when you have this kind of a side project, it seems like these guys are hyperactive in terms of creating music. So I don't know why they needed a Heavydeath kind of a band, which is doom death, to go with Runemagick, which is then again Death Doom 2. But be it as may, pretty interesting that sometimes there are these hyperactive creators, musicians who make this music. Now, if you are a fan of Runemagick, I think it's kind of a mandatory to go through Heavydeath stuff, at least here and there. But I don't know if it manages to overcome the quality of Runemagick. I think it's quite likely that it may pale in comparison, but obviously these are all matters of taste. Now, links are provided to Heavydeath's material in the description box of this video, and if I got you interested, go give it a listen, and I hope you enjoy. And if you are a collector, I guess this Anthology thing is very much suited for your needs. At least it has a lot of material, so probably good bang for buck, assuming you want to have as much music as possible in one neat package. So now you know a little bit more than maybe before this video and all that stuff, so give it a go or give it not, it's up to you. Rauta out.